sidebar because that way.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to call the November 4th, 2021 City Council meeting to order. And for the Pledge of Allegiance tonight, I'd like to ask Councilmember Harris to please lead us in the pledge. And this is the gavel to call us to order.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, and please let the record show that all council members are present. Ladies and gentlemen, as we begin tonight, I must address a significant event that has occurred. Over the past 10 days, we've been appraised of a police action that resulted in charges being filed against Mr. Anthony Martinelli. He was booked into SCORE jail and had an arraignment hearing. At the arraignment hearing, Mr. Martinelli was charged with 6 counts of domestic violence, allegedly inflicted against his partner, and in certain instances with their infant child observing the abuse. These are extremely serious charges, and the charging documents represent a series of actions that are unacceptable and violent. The City of Des Moines has a zero tolerance for domestic violence. Simply because someone is a city council member does not exempt them from the zero tolerance policy. His behavior as outlined in the formal charges is not something that we will tolerate, and it brings dishonor to the city council. I would encourage Mr. Martinelli to immediately submit his resignation. The alleged conduct by Councilmember Martinelli is unacceptable and reprehensible. Therefore, I am moving new business item number 3, introduction of items for future consideration to right now and follow it with this motion. I move to direct staff to make a formal censure and condemnation of the alleged behavior, and as part of that censure document, to include the removal of Councilmember Martinelli from all committee assignments and bring this item back to the November 18th, 2021 council meeting. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. Motion was made by myself and seconded by Tracy Buxton. Was there discussion? Okay. See Tracy, Councilmember Buxton.
Thank you, Mayor. As a former mental health professional who has worked in the recovery community and has lived experience with domestic abuse, the narrative provided for the arrest warrant was incredibly disturbing, and you already used the word reprehensible on many levels. I understand that we are under an innocent until proven guilty paradigm, but my question is, innocent of what? Even if the council member is able to evade jail time, there are still severe family issues that need significant attention. For the time being, he might have a right to keep his seat, but I would ask, would this be wise or in the best interest of our community? This particular city has a very strong commitment to support domestic violence work. Not only do we have a DV advocate on staff, but we officially recognize DV Awareness Month through a yearly proclamation, which is followed by a strong council member and citizen response in support of victims and advocacy agencies. The optics and messaging in this case is incredibly incongruent with serving our community. In addition, serving as a council member in a city this size, it's not an income-producing job. It requires whatever extra we have after attention to our primary jobs and families. It's almost a volunteer considering the cost of considerable community participation. So relinquishing this position would not be relinquishing an income that sustains a family or life, quite the opposite. Stepping down would actually be a gift back into a family or life. Therefore, I am in strong support of censure in order to relieve Councilmember Martinelli of any additional responsibilities at this time. I strongly recommend that he resign his seat for the benefit of his family and the community. And I'm also asking the community to write to the council with their feelings on this subject. Thank you.
Anyway, Councilmember Banks, then Councilmember.
Oh, sorry.
Councilmember Banks, you're first.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor. I have appreciated every word that Councilmember Buxton stated. We simply had a previous committee meeting with Mr. Martinelli on the Public Safety and Emergency Management Committee meeting. At one of our earlier meetings, he was one who proposed that and recommended that we increase the penalty for the crime of domestic violence when children were present. And indeed, based on everything I've read, and certainly as was stated, he was charged and arrested for exactly one of those, and that's a child being involved. I would say I am so disheartened at the fact that we haven't had that many citizens speak up. I see now that we're getting more and more, but there is absolutely no cause, reason, or rhyme why a man should put his hands on a woman, why a man should have his own child in jeopardy behind what has occurred with this woman. Frankly, as I said earlier, I am totally disgusted. And as far as I'm concerned, I absolutely agree that he should step down. If he had any decency whatsoever, he should step down. In the meantime, I would say censure, absolutely, I am in favor of. Thank you, Mayor.
Councilmember Harris, then Councilmember Mahoney.
Mayor, could I ask you to reread your motion so I understand? I'm terribly sorry.
I move to direct staff to make a formal censure and condemnation of the alleged behavior, and as part of the censure document, to include the removal of Councilmember Martinelli from all of his committee assignments, and to bring this item back to the November 18th, 2021 council meeting.
Okay, thank you for that. May I ask, what is the necessity of having the staff do that? Is there some,
censure is documented.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Mahoney.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to remind the public, and I encourage them to make a public records request of the police report of this incident so they're fully informed. It's 136 pages, and it requires some time set aside to read it. I agree that Councilmember Martinelli should not be on the Public Safety and Emergency Management Committee. It brings conflict of interest at the least. This is also why I urge a resignation, is it's going to be a distraction for the city. And on the fact of just a human point of view, this is intolerable, and our city can't have it, and especially in these positions of leadership where we preach and practice our lives, and this doesn't fit that this doesn't fit that criteria. So I ask and implore Mr. Martinelli resign. Thank you.
I see Councilmember Netting, and Councilmember Buxton is asking for a second time. Councilmember Netting.
Thank you, Mayor. I don't take what I'm about to say lightly. Everyone is innocent until proven guilty. but the accusation of 6 counts of domestic violence against Councilmember Martinelli were enough to warrant his arrest and to have him serve jail time. His arrest alone taints our city, bringing undue and unnecessary negative implications to what we allow to happen within our city. As public servants, we must hold ourselves to a higher standard, as we are your representatives of our city. The arrest and accusations of 6 counts of domestic violence against Councilmember Martinelli are deplorable and are in and of themselves enough for me to believe that Councilmember Martinelli is not fit to make decisions for our city. So I wholeheartedly ask for him to resign and support the censure. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. I see Councilmember Harris and then Councilmember Buxton.
Thank you, Mayor. So I guess I would just, it would have been better if Councilmember Martinelli had been afforded an opportunity to speak on his own behalf before we considered this motion. That's just, to me, if we're really about, innocence and so on, the presumption of innocence, I guess that doesn't take anything away from the severity of the accusations or the content of the report, but that just seems to me would have helped me in the decision-making process. In fact, I'm kind of surprised that Councilmember Martinelli had not made a statement to this point. It's your call, Mayor, but it just seems to me like that would have been the a better approach. Thank you.
Councilmember Buxton.
Deputy Mayor mentioned writing. I would just say write to go to the website and write to the council, or bwilkins@DesMoinesWA.gov. What would you prefer if people want to write? You asked people to write.
City Council at DesMoinesWA.gov. Okay. All those in favor of moving forward with the censure, please raise your right hand until I call your name. I see Councilmember Harris, Councilmember Bangs, Deputy Mayor Mahoney, Councilmember Nutting, Councilmember Buxton, and myself. Mr. Martinelli, you have a vote.
Opposed.
Okay, passes 6-1. Okay, this takes us to our correspondence. Is there any correspondence?
No correspondence, Mayor, but we do have written public comment.
Okay, the first
Not written.
written public comment. Please go forward with it.
The following have provided written public comment. Des Moines grocery workers deserve hazard pay. Alicia Lamond, Karsten Wise, Christina Harris, Heather Larsh, Tanya Kakolidis, Sandy Nahn, and Ian Latow. Rob Anderson, CM Martinelli resignation. Tad Doviak, Anthony Martinelli must resign immediately. Patricio Mendoza, request to council Martinelli resignation. Corey Bibby, requesting A. Martinelli to step down ASAP. That concludes written public comment, and we have 3 who signed up to speak. The first person is Betty Taylor.
Please bring her forward. Okay, before we go forward to comments from the public, I just remind a person making impertinent or slanderous remarks or who become boisterous, threatening, or personally abusive while addressing the council will be muted and removed from the meeting. And Betty Taylor, you have 3 minutes to speak. Betty, you must be muted. Are you still with us?
Okay, can you hear me now?
I hear you now.
Great. Okay, good evening. Good evening, council members. Good evening, citizens. I find it a pleasure and an honor to come before you this day And my name is Betty Taylor. And as you well know, my grandson's name was Ezra Taylor. He was the one that was shot and murdered at the restaurant. I would like to thank the city of Des Moines, thank the police department, thank the detectives, thank you to everyone that worked diligently. Thank you for the efforts that the murderer, he has been captured and he's in jail. He's in jail. I'm just so speechless because it was my grandson and I'll never see him again. But I thank you guys so much. Thank you for working diligently to make sure that this person was captured. We know that there's going to be an arraignment. We know that there's going to be a trial, but we're in it for the long haul. One thing that I would like to say also is that from my knowledge is that no one should be able to commit crime after crime after crime and get off. No one should do that. No one should be able to kill and go to jail and get out and kill and run and hide. That's not even American. And in saying that, I know that there's, I think about our judicial system and how I don't understand. I just don't understand. But I just don't understand. I don't understand how people just get away and think they can get away, do stuff, do crimes, and think it's okay to do it and get in jail, go to prison, get out, and you do it again. That's not normal. That's not even appropriate. And lives are affected. I don't know how many minutes I have left, or even seconds, but as you were talking about this other council member, if I could say something, I was looking in you guys' bylaws, and I would refer to the bylaws as for any disciplinary action. Your bylaws are awesome. They're great. They're to the point, strictly by the book. And yeah, I believe that you all will do the right thing. And once again, I thank you for being in you guys are part of my life. You guys are part of my life. I love you guys so much. And I just want to say that from the bottom of my heart. I love you guys so much and thank you. Whenever if somebody from Des Moines sees me, they welcome me with open arms. The vigil was okay. The funeral was okay, but you guys were there the whole time. Thank you. We appreciate you. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Mrs. Taylor. And again, we are sorry for your loss. The next person to speak is Selena Taylor.
Good evening. My name is Selena Taylor. I am the mother of the victim, Ezra Taylor, who was gunned down September 26, 2021 at La Familia restaurant. And I wanted to say that the Des Moines Police Department, the detectives, everyone that was a part of the city of Des Moines was very supportive of me, very supportive of my family. And they had asked me what I needed, and they were there. And I appreciate you guys so much, as it is very, very hard for me and my family. My son was an actor. He just finished his film. He was an innocent bystander. He was enrolled in the New York Film Academy, where he was going to be doing other movies as well. I did want to say that within that, it bothers me, it angers me to see different ones who have guns, or people that are not supposed to get out of jail and then have a gun and then shoot other people that their lives were taken innocently. I also want to say that I have many words to say, but I just wanted to let you guys know that my question and my comment that I wanted to make was a change needs to happen within that area, within Des Moines, especially the area of the 22855 area location. We decided to create a memorial for my son. As you drive down Pack Highway, you might see flowers, you might see pictures, you might see a very, very beautiful, beautiful scene in memory of my son. But I do want to create a memorial to remind patrons that gun violence is not okay, to create a safe space and a place for people to come without getting gunned down in a crossfire, creating a place where people will call a love center, for coming to a place where love center will help people and not harm people. A love center that helps people, ones that will get off their feet, will provide an on-site job opportunities for and have shelters rather than violence, rather than people being gunned down. My heart is broken because of my son is not here anymore. And I would love to see change within the city of Des Moines. Like my mother is Betty Taylor. Like she said that I appreciate you guys so much for your support. And the chief of police, as well as the detectives, they were asking me, well, what do you need? What do you need? And they were there for us. And so we really appreciate that. But Mayor Pina, I just want to let you know that I would love to see change within that area of the Love Center, creating job opportunities or shelters. And me, I'm in the community and I will be in the community. I will continue to make change for the better because I believe in our system and I believe that people should not carry guns. People should not, just people should make changes or whatnot. So this is just still fresh to us. And so, but I appreciate you guys so much. And I will definitely be a part of your circle, and you can see my face again. And if you have any questions, you can call me. But I love you guys so much. I appreciate you guys so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Taylor. And again, there's no way to express how sorry we are for your loss. I know it took great strength to speak tonight. And I just want you to know that this city and this council and everybody here who's heard your words are with you and your family. The next person to speak is Christy Harris.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Christy Harris, and I'm here to speak on behalf of grocery store workers in the city of Des Moines. Grocery workers have been on the front lines protecting our food supply, keeping us safe, and making sure we have tons of toilet paper, water, things like that. Unlike healthcare or law enforcement, these hardworking people did not elect to sign up for work in a pandemic plague, COVID environment. Safeway, the main two stores that were asking for hazard pay, has raked in billions of additional profits during this times of COVID, and they funneled billions of these profits into their shareholders and their executives and their CEOs, while the workers whose labor is creating these profits have gotten nothing, except for chronic understaffing, COVID exposure, theft, abuse from the customers, and so forth. And the majority of the public is for this. They want this for our grocery store workers. That is a fact. And I understand that it's not fair to other people, but they're more than welcome to come ask for hazard pay money themselves. That's fine. So once again, I'm asking on behalf of hardworking grocery store workers for a couple bucks of hazard pay because Safeway can more than afford it. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there one? Okay, that concludes our public comment tonight. And it is now time for the city manager's report. Michael Mathias, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. First, I'm a fan of unsung heroes. And one person, well, a couple of people on our staff have just really stepped up to the challenge of dealing with COVID and helping the city function. And that's essentially Dale Southwick, who's our IT manager, and Chris, Terry Ann. They've all just been so outstanding, dedicated, committed, coming to City Hall or the police department at all hours of the night, depending on what the need is, making sure that we have virtual programming, hybrid programming, our computers function. And they've just done an amazing job. And I think it's something that it's very easy to take for granted, but it's not fair to take for granted. So just wanted to shout out to those folks. I'm also going to ask Chief Thomas for an update on a couple of, investigations that are occurring, and for him to say as much as possible that's appropriate. Thank you, Chief.
Good evening and thank you. And I hope Selena and Betty are still on, but I just wanted to say on behalf of the police department how sorry we are for the tragedy that occurred that took your son and grandson. And it took a lot of courage and it was heartfelt. So thank you for your words. I can tell you that our staff put in countless hours to do everything we possibly could in coordination to bring the person responsible to this or for this terrible crime and ensure that he not only got arrested, but we're doing everything we possibly can to bring justice. And with that in mind, there is a court hearing. I'll start with after the arrest. We were absolutely shocked and disappointed when the suspect was initially arrested, and the initial judge only set bail at $1 million, which is completely inappropriate and not enough. By the time the case made it up to Superior Court, cooler heads prevailed, and bail is currently set at no bail. And there will be a hearing on next Wednesday, down at the Regional Justice Center, where this case will begin its journey and process forward. And we are committed as a department to do everything we can to help ensure that justice is found in this case. And when you have people like Selena and Betty coming forward and the work that we've done with them, it really does encourage and push our detectives and officers and people involved to work even harder than they already do and more conscientious. So there's not much more to say on that at this point, other than that the suspect is currently being held on no bail, and the next hearing in this case will be next Wednesday at the Regional Justice Center. And then last week we had an incident at the Safeway, in the Safeway parking lot, 272nd and Pacific Highway South. Members of the U.S. Marshals Fugitive Task Force and the member from the Seattle Police Department and the Department of Corrections as well as our officer, Doug Weeble, and our canine ranger were on scene. They had received a tip that a wanted violent felon that was involved in it was a felony kidnap case that surrounded a domestic violence situation. The task force got a tip that the suspect was at the gas station there at the Safeway parking lot. They confronted and tried to block the suspect in. He pulled a gun on the officers and then was involved in shooting at the officers. The officers returned fire, and that suspect is in custody. He survived his injuries. Thank goodness no police officers or innocent citizens or residents were injured. So the Seattle Police Department Force investigation team came in and conducted that investigation because one of their officers was involved, and they currently are under a federal consent decree which requires that. So that is the current update on those two cases, and I'm open to any questions if you have any.
Not seeing any.
Okay, thank you, Chief. Appreciate that. Mayor, that concludes the city manager's report.
Okay, thank you. Will the clerk please read the consent calendar?
Item 1, approval of vouchers. Item 2, approval of minutes. Item 3, Marina Fuel System Replacement Additional Services Request Number 3 with Wood Harbinger Consulting Engineers. Item 4, Small Business Saturday Proclamation. And that concludes the consent calendar, Mayor.
Thank you. Councilmember Netting.
I move to approve the consent agenda as read.
Second.
We have a motion made by Councilmember Nutting, seconded by Councilmember Bangs. Does any member wish to remove any items? Okay, seeing none. All those in favor, please raise your hand until I call your name. I see Councilmember Buxton, Councilmember Nutting, Councilmember Bangs, Councilmember Harris, Deputy Mayor Mahoney, myself, Mr. Martinelli. You have a vote.
I'm in favor. I'm in favor, Mayor.
Thank you. 7-0. Okay. So at this point, I will read Small Business Proclamation Summary into the record. Now therefore, the Des Moines City Council hereby proclaims the Saturday after Thanksgiving as Small Business Saturday, and urge the residents of our community and communities across the country to support small businesses and merchants on Small Business Saturday and throughout the year. And this takes us to new business item number 1, the 2022-2027 Parks and Recreation and Senior Services Master Plan Update Briefing. And we have a staff presentation by, I believe, our Assistant Parks, Recreation and Senior Services, Assistant Director of Parks, Recreation and Senior Services, Nicole Nordholm.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Nicole Nordholm, Assistant Director of Parks, Recreation and Senior Services. I am pleased to welcome back our AHBL consultants tonight to present a bit of the 2022 to 2027 Parks, Rec and Senior Services Master Plan update, specifically with a focus on policy recommendations, some survey results, and community input. You initially met them and were updated a bit on the master plan work during our September 16th meeting. And I will again tonight turn it over to Wayne Carlson and Stephanie Hindmarch.
Great. Yeah, thank you very much. As Nicole mentioned, this evening we want to provide you with a briefing and update as to where we're at with the Parks, Recreation and Senior Services plan. And as she said, with special attention on the survey that was randomly mailed to approximately 2,800 households within the city. As you remember, when we were last before you, the survey window had closed and we were still compiling the results. So we wanted to share those results and really how those results may be reflected within, say, goals and policies for the plan. And then finally, we want to share with you the next steps with regard to our return to the council with a complete plan on December 2nd. Next slide. So just as a reminder, my name is Wayne Carlson. I'm a principal and owner at AHBL. And with me this evening is Stephanie Hindmarch. And she's been the planner doing much of the work in inventory, as well as Brittany Port, who couldn't be here this evening. She's on vacation. And then we have been supported and really working shoulder to shoulder this entire time with your really great staff. And I want to commend them. They're always available whenever we have questions or whatnot. And that would be Susan Cesar. I won't give their titles because you know them as well, if not better than I do. Nicole Nordholm, Kyle Ellers, and of course Denise Lathrop in planning. Next slide. So in terms of kind of telling you where we've been through this process and what we are assembling, we've been to the farmers market. We've been to the farmers market on 2 different instances this summer in July and August. And we had 35 people leave formal comments, and those would have been sticky notes on the boards. We also had informal discussions with many others where we took down notes and try to have and that'll be reflected in the plan. We did a kindergarten class visit to Midway Elementary, and the children shared their ideas of their ideal park. We did, and many of you on the council were here, but we went to Midway Park. We had an open house at Midway Park for National Night Out, where we had 65 participants leave notes and others, of course, again, talk to us. We had around 30 or so participants at a couple of activity center open houses. We interviewed various stakeholders that provide services within Federal Way. So these would be more organizations. We had email and voicemail comments from 16 people that will be, and this is all going to be documented in the complete plan that you'll be receiving. Of course, the community survey, which we wanted to share with you here this evening. And then, of course, the other things that are inputs into this plan would be the parks inventory and analysis, and the demographics to compare that for levels of service, programming information, and then, of course, the recommendations. Next slide. So I want to begin to kind of walk through some of the findings from the mailed survey. So again, the mailed survey went to approximately 2,800 households, with the idea that we needed 400 responses, and we received 410 for it to be statistically valid for a city of the size of Des Moines, which is approximately 30,000. So that is, generally speaking, you get a response rate of about 1 in 7. So that's why we had to send out so many just to get 400. So we sent out about 2,800. And this slide identifies what are considered to be the high priority facilities and high priority programs. And highest priority or high priority means, and these were related to questions on the survey, but meant highest unmet needs combined with most important to you. So we asked, what was asked was, what are unmet needs, and then what is most important to you? And so several of the items on here will be addressed in the marina redevelopment, but they're still worth noting. So walking and biking trails, waterfront parks, restrooms, splash pads, off-leash dog parks, and natural parks and preserves. Also, community festivals, and these are programs. What we heard from many, especially at the farmers market, was just a yearning to get back to some of the programs and festivals that the residents of Des Moines really enjoy, especially during the summertime that the parks in the city put on. So anyway, we heard that repeatedly, and it also came out not just in our in-person but also on the surveys. Adult fitness and wellness programs, concerts, and movies in the park, as well as a real enjoyment of the farmers market. Next slide. We also asked a question about what are the top 3 actions that households would be willing to fund with tax dollars. So this is the question, the proverbial, your money where your mouth is type thing. And one of those, what came first, the first 2 really were related to trails and connectivity. So developing connectivity of trails throughout the community was expressed by 26.4% of the respondents, as well as developing new walking trails. And then improving restrooms at parks was a response by roughly 1 in 5. Next slide. So which parks and facilities, we also asked a question, which parks and facilities should receive the most attention from the city over the next 2 years? And so 44%, almost 45% said the Des Moines Creek Trail. Nearly 39% said the marina/fishing pier. And then Des Moines Beach Park was the response by about 28.5%. So, and then another question was related to what are the reasons, or what are the top reasons that you as a household would prevent you from using the city's abundant parks, trails, and recreation facilities. Approximately 30% said insufficient security and loitering. And we heard that also when we were in person at Midway Park for the National Night Out. Not knowing what's being offered was also approximately 30%. So kind of getting the word out as to what's being offered. Not knowing the location of parks and facilities, about 29%. The desired program or facility not being offered was approximately 22%, and a lack of parking was approximately 20%. Next slide.
So we also wanted to share with you some of our findings from our mapping process as well. On the left here, you see a map showing quarter-mile distance from all the existing parks in the city. As you can see, there are a couple of areas that don't really have coverage within a quarter mile. You can see some areas of North Hill, a couple little pockets in central Des Moines, Pacific Ridge, Zenith, South Des Moines, Woodmont, and part of Redondo as well. And so these findings also advise future investments in our recommendations in the plan. On the right-hand side, you see a map of King County equity scores. This is compiled by the county. This is using 2018 data. And essentially, they give a score based on income and race demographics. And as you can see, the lower scores represent more wealthy, less diverse areas of King County. And the higher scores represent less wealthy, more diverse areas of King County. In Des Moines, Pacific Ridge and part of central Des Moines has the highest diversity or equity score. And then the rest of the city kind of hovers somewhere in the middle, with the exception of a piece of Redondo, quite a small piece of the neighborhood, but that has a lower score representing a more wealthy, less diverse area. Again, these maps are intended to help guide future investments in parks and recreation facilities, and they're included in the plan. We also wanted to share with you some themes from our outreach process that included the farmers markets, open houses, stakeholder interviews, among a couple of other methods as well. One topic that came up pretty frequently was a desire for a wider variety of recreation facilities, especially for children. We heard that quite a bit from parents. Also a new, unique facility that attracts people from around the region. This was also expressed by a few parents in particular who said that they often travel outside of the city to find good play opportunities for their children, and they'd love to have those opportunities closer to home. A lot of people mentioned splash parks, adventure playgrounds, that kind of facility. More programming for kids and teens was also a big focus, especially teenagers. Parents wanted teens to have more safe and fun places to go after school and on the weekends, as well as in the summertime, and also reducing existing barriers to programming, such as transportation barriers, cost barriers, language barriers, etc. Fixing or replacing play structures that have been removed or need repair. A couple of people brought up specific play structures that have been removed in the past and have not yet been replaced, such as at Cecil Powell Park, and parents really would like to see those prioritized. Restrooms and water fountains at popular parks, especially some of those more active sports facilities focused parks, was also a priority for many people we spoke to, as well as expanded access to community gardening and urban farming. We heard from a few people that they enjoy their existing access to gardening and farming in the city and would like to see more opportunities for that. Better ADA accessibility in existing parks, so improving playgrounds, pathways, and other facilities to be more accessible. A general emphasis on safety was very common in our conversations with the public, feeling safe using parks. Connectivity and safe routes to parks is also another theme, especially, again, a lot of families had concerns about youth accessing parks and safe crossing, sidewalks, transportation infrastructure. And then generally cleanliness was also another theme in our outreach.
So you saw a lot of, yeah, so
Okay.
you saw a lot of similarities between what we heard in person and the written survey, and that's not a surprise. So Stephanie will go through the recommendations.
Yeah, so starting off with facilities recommendations, these parallel a lot of the items that we've already covered. But evaluating existing parks needs for security improvements. Like Wayne said, that was really the top reason, the top obstacle to people accessing existing parks and facilities. So evaluating the park system, looking at specific parks for ways that security could be improved, either through lighting, vegetation management, and items like that. Exploring potential acquisition of parkland for community parks, neighborhood parks, and trails. We found that there was an unmet need for these types of facilities just at a citywide level, so prioritizing those types of parks acquisition. Prioritizing acquisition in neighborhoods with the least existing parks access. Again, going back to that map, showing what parts of the city have the least access within walking distance. Exploring opportunities to expand the network of walking and biking trails. The city's already done a lot of work towards that, but that was a pretty strong theme across the survey and the outreach. So I'd like to recommend additional work in that area. Evaluating existing parks needs for a variety of facilities, including restrooms, lighting, garbage cans, water fountains, shade, accessibility improvements, and additional parking. These were all facility types that were clear priorities for the public. And then evaluating existing parks for a potential new off-leash dog park, more pickleball courts, more workout stations, and expanded community gardening. There's a clear demand for all of these items throughout the process. Also evaluating the condition of existing play structures and replacing those that have been removed. Like I said previously, a lot of parents expressed a desire to see some of those playgrounds replaced. Exploring potential sites for a new unique playground facility, explore opportunities for increased public art, especially art that reflects the diversity of the population of Des Moines. Prioritize more frequent vegetation maintenance, and then continued investment in open spaces and waterfront parks. For programming, as Wayne touched on in the survey results, there's a clear desire for continued and expanded event programming, as well as more adult fitness and wellness programs and physical activity programming for seniors. More teen-centric programming, again, fun and safe places for teens to go outside of school hours. More inclusive programming, that might mean programming and advertising for programs in languages other than English, as well as opportunities for free or low-cost programs for all ages, and then more opportunities for environmental education and outdoor recreation. And then a few other recommendations came up through the process. One, increased access to information about parks and programming. we think there might be some opportunities to expand information on the city website about the parks that are available. We also heard from activity center staff that they'd like to do more proactive outreach to the community. They're really trying to bring in that next generation of seniors, and they see proactive outreach as one way of doing that and understanding the needs of that population. So exploring ways that they might be able to do some of that. Prioritizing diverse hiring. That's something that came up in some of our stakeholder interviews, as well as conversations with the public. People want staff that reflect the population, and so that's something to keep in mind moving forward as the department continues to hire new staff. And then exploring ways to collaborate with other departments to address homelessness in parks. It's also a topic area that came up on several occasions. And just to note, we do have some other park-specific recommendations that are included in the draft plan. So those are pertain to specific locations based on what we've heard from folks in our outreach. We also had 2 proposed new policies. We reviewed the policies from the most recent comprehensive plan and found that those were pretty well supported throughout our outreach process. We did have 2 that we would like to propose adding in on top of those. And the plan would, be adopted as part of the next comprehensive plan update. So these would become elements of the policies in the comprehensive plan. The first one is to provide additional parks facilities and recreation programming that specifically caters to the needs of children and teenagers and provides safe and productive outlets for Des Moines youth to socialize and recreate. Again, that's based on what we've heard from a lot of parents, that they especially want places for children and teens to socialize and programming for that age group. The second one is to provide and sustain a healthy urban forest in alignment with the Green Des Moines Partnership Urban Forest Enhancement Plan. Pursue opportunities either through city-led initiatives or partnering with nonprofit organizations and private entities to restore native vegetation and plant and maintain trees in city-owned parks and open spaces. So just wanted to make sure that that plan is in alignment with the parks plan. There are a lot of opportunities for the city to take action on some of the items that are recommended as part of that plan, as the city does own quite a bit of open space and park property. So I'll hand it back over to staff to talk about next steps.
Yes, thank you, Stephanie and Wayne. And I guess, I will just add that we do hope for general input and feedback from council. And so early next week, we plan to send the draft plan in its entirety to the council. And we would ask that you submit any written or questions or comments to either myself or to our consultants, and we will plan to incorporate that and get back to you, hopefully in the next 2 weeks. So if we could have kind of feedback by about November 22nd, 23rd, that would be really helpful in then bringing the plan back for adoption at our December 2nd council meeting. So thank you all.
Council, do you have any questions? Okay, I can't see a full screen, so 1 second, please keep your hand up. Okay, so I see Deputy Mayor Mahoney, I see Councilmember Harris, I see Councilmember Buxton. Okay, so we'll start with Deputy Mayor Mahoney. Well, Deputy Mayor Mahoney, we can't hear you. We'll come back to you. You may need to do a reboot of your something. We heard you earlier, but we're not hearing you right now. So I'm going to jump to Councilmember Harris, and we'll come back to Deputy Mayor Mahoney.
Thank you, Mayor. When you say it's statistically significant, is that, I'm just struck by their, somewhere early on in the presentation, there's, you ask the public what they want, and it seems like the 3 biggies were centered around like the farmers market and, the waterfront and so forth. But then there's this other slide shortly thereafter that talks about, more stuff for kids to do and And those are geographically in tension with one another, if you take my point. The different walking trails or stuff that, might be more towards the south end of town. And so I'm just wondering, do you see what I'm talking about there? Or is there some sort of, does your survey take into account, some sort of geographical aspect?
Yeah, it takes into account some geographical aspect in a couple of ways. It certainly asks about specific parks and needed facilities, and the distribution by the of the survey, hit all of the neighborhoods. It was, and so when you say statistically valid, for a city of approximately 30,000 people, to have a 95% confidence level in the survey results, we needed to have about 400 responses. And so, and to get 400 responses, we need to send out essentially about 2,800 surveys. And a specialized survey company called ETC Institute, which kind of specializes in doing this for parks and public entities, cities, counties, state agencies, administered that survey. So I guess there was a geographic distribution of and so we expected that some of the responses would identify, and there are, as you'll see when you get the entire packet, park specific recommendations. But we would have been probably another half an hour of a presentation if we had gone through the recommendations that the recipients had, or the respondents had, for the parks that were immediately adjacent to themselves. But there was a couple of parks that I guess are so popular that they kind of rose to the top because people might be leaving their own smaller neighborhood and going to those parks, and I think that's why you saw those reflected. But there are recommendations and responses really for most all parks within the city.
Yeah, no, thank you. I'm not trying to question. It just seems like people, they'll go to the brand they know, and whereas, they may want something in another part of town, but that just seems almost impossible, or, they can't visualize it. So anyway, the other thing, really quickly, does your report provide any kind of weighting based on the possibility of funding? That's probably an out there question, but some of these things would be easier to achieve, right? Or not?
Boy, I'll take first crack at that, and then maybe staff can add on. But generally speaking, a lot of times with the park recreation open space plans, you identify the capital facilities component of it tends to be a little bit of a wish list, because so much in the way of park funding tends to be through grants, whether it's recreation conservation office. Boeing gives lots of money out for parks. And so it tends to be a little bit of a wish list. Obviously, the stuff that gets funded through the general plan or through impact, those types of issues are generally in parks plans what rises to the top. But those lists tend to be longer than a traditional, say, city CIP, which or TIP, which is the top stuff is all funded.
Yeah, no, I'm just trying to think in terms of like what is aspiration? Should we focus on the aspirational versus, okay, this is reasonable to get done within a couple of years, as opposed to a long range kind of approach? That's all I'm looking for. Thank you, sir.
I can jump in there and answer a little bit of that. So this plan is more of a long range look at what our community desires in our park system. And then each year we do a CIP, and those are the projects that are prioritized out of the list. And so each year we will evaluate, which ones are ripe, partially based on funding availability, grants, all that kind of thing. So where that comes in is the CIP.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. And sometimes just to kind of follow on that, just really quick, sometimes we hear that say the Recreation Conservation Office with the state is emphasizing something. They might be emphasizing trails, and they release funding every 2 years. So that, one time it may be trails. Sometimes it might be non-motorized voting facilities. They sometimes, kind of try to push certain things. And so projects can
what I was trying to get at.
Yeah, so sometimes projects can move up the list based on opportunity.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Deputy Mayor Mahoney, are you back online?
Can you hear me?
Yes, you are good to go.
Hey, I don't know what, I was unmuted. Can we go back to the map, if you don't mind, for a quick second?
Is someone able to bring us back?
I think Stephanie will be sharing. There we go.
I think Bonnie's got it.
Oh, sorry.
Yep,
So,
that's what we're looking for.
Yeah, so the first thing, I believe you have Zenith and South Des Moines backwards there.
Zenith and South Des Moines backwards.
Yeah, you see there, Zenith should be near the water. South Des Moines should be the other way around. And then my question on this map is, this is just our city parks. It doesn't include schools.
Yes, it also includes the state park, Saltwater State Park, but no like open space facilities, and does not include schools.
Because I think that's a piece we'd like to see as well, because of the fact that a lot of those are used in lieu of parks, you might say. The other one is, was there anything in the questionnaire about the parks offerings? I know we send out the currents every, to every address, every quarter or so forth. I know it may not be in other languages, and that might be a barrier. Was there any questions that asked them how they knew about parks, or because there seemed to be about like 30% or so that didn't know anything about what we offered?
I believe there was a question in the survey about how people find out about parks, and if I'm remembering correctly, I think City Currents was the #1 place that people find out about it, but we can answer that question in more detail.
Okay. I just didn't know if there was a language barrier maybe, or something like that for some of our residents. Because I know the Currents usually details a lot of the park options. Parks and Recreation. Okay, that's what I got. Thank you.
Thank you. Then we have Councilmember Buxton.
Thank you. So in regard to the information that will be provided to us shortly, Nicole, you mentioned, was this slide presentation, for example, with the map that we just saw and a couple of the other data sets, going to be available as we mull over and think about possible questions or something we'd like to see?
Are you asking for this before the full plan?
Right, right. This slide presentation that we got, is that going to be part of what will be distributed to us, or are the data sets and maps that were in the slide presentation going to be included with the information you're going to give to us in a few weeks?
Yes, that'll all be in the full plan that you'll get early next week. But we also, if you want, can provide the slideshow right now to you tonight, even if you want to just have this ahead of time.
Sure, and Bonnie usually does that too, I think. So, okay. And then I did just want to make a note that this is, in my experience so far, this is the first time that we have really, seems like, conducted this kind of community outreach with all of these facets. It was so fabulously done, and I appreciate the consideration of the younger generation, this texting outreach. Though I know that personally I was a little bit like, am I being, spammed or whatever, but the effort was fabulous in the way that we worked to reach into households and into people's opinions and lives that we normally hadn't tried before. And I really appreciated the innovation of it and the way that, I don't think anybody could complain about our community outreach in this on behalf of Parks and Rec. You guys just did a fabulous job with this. That, in my opinion, I'm really impressed. So thank you.
Thanks.
We did hear from a few people that thought they were being spammed or, through the text messages. But the reason we have to reach out to 2,500 is you do get so many that, or 2,800 that you basically do a 7-to-1 ratio, is because you do have so many that ignore. So, yeah.
Councilmember Harris, your second time.
Yeah. Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Carlson, just as a reminder, when you were here before, you said something about you might be able to provide some census data, just the demographics of each neighborhood. Will that be in the packet that we'll be looking at?
Yeah, that we'll get that in the plan. That'll be in the overall plan. Yeah.
You demand. Thanks.
Yep.
Okay. I'm not seeing any other questions, so I'm going to take us forward to our next item. We have a draft resolution 21-051 adopting the 2021 amendment to the 2015 Surface Water Comprehensive Plan, and we have a presentation by our water quality specialist, Tyler Beakley.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Council. This is Tyler Beakley with the Surface Water Management Department here at the City of Des Moines. Tonight, we will be presenting on the conclusions made from our mid-plan check-in of our 2015 comp plan. Our comp plan is a 10-year plan, so we are right a little past the mid-year point where we want to check in and really evaluate the progress of the plan and the plan's goals. To complete this effort, we've worked with consultants, a consultant team headed by Parametrics, and over the last year presented multiple times to the Environment Committee. So here with me tonight, I have Austin Fisher with Parametrics, who will lead us in a presentation, and happy to answer any questions afterwards.
Thank you, Tyler. Everybody see my screen?
Yes.
All right. Well, hello, my name is Austin Fisher. I'm with Parametrics. I also have support today from Julie Brandt from Parametrics, who authored the mid-plan update, and Matt Hobson and John Gillarducci from the FCS group, who updated the financial plan. So on our agenda tonight, we'll give a brief overview and then run through the new state stormwater permit requirements. Then I'll head over to Matt to give a summary of the update to the financial model. The current plan was adopted in 2015. In June of 2020, we began this mid-plan update, and we evaluated capital spending, new regulations, future needs, and we updated the financial model. Today, we want to present to you the recommendations to amend the plan. So let's start with the new regulations. The current permit was effective August 1st, 2019, and primarily the permit updated language for clarity, requiring few changes on the city's part. The two new requirements are watershed development planning and business source control. The planning requirements requires the Surface Water Department to coordinate with other departments, and city staff have begun that work. The source control program primarily involves a business inventory and compliance assistance by the city for that. So overall, the main theme coming out of recommendations are these cross-departmental coordination efforts. Some of those activities will include stormwater management action plans, and potentially stormwater facility retrofits and tree retention and planting credits. Earlier, I mentioned that we looked at the capital spending, and in addition to updating the capital plan to reflect the work completed to date, we also added a few grant-funded projects and updated the project estimates to reflect current construction prices. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Matt to run you through the financial model. Just let me know Matt, when you want to advance.
All right, absolutely. Just volume check. Everybody hear me?
Here I am.
So the financial plan is meant to complement the stormwater plan update. Just as context, the rate study looks at the rates that are charged to both residents and businesses in the city to ensure that those rates fully fund the cost of the utility. Unlike many other city services, the stormwater utility is an enterprise fund in which the costs are designed to be fully offset by fees charged to customers. Next slide. So we followed this industry standard methodology in looking at the city's financial policies, which relate to financial minimum reserves for the solid surface water fund, look at operating expenses and capital expenses and compare those to rate revenues over a long-term forecast. Next slide. Fiscal policies or financial policies for any utility are kind of the groundwork and the foundation for a rate study. They dictate the use of funds, the size of financial reserves to maintain a self-sufficient and independent utility. I would like to highlight one of those policies here on this slide. It's the second from the bottom, capital reserve funding. This is a proposed new financial policy, which would set aside $100,000 each year, beginning in 2022, to fund those capital projects that aren't on the radar right now, that unanticipated or emergency capital projects. So this is the only new financial policy that's being proposed in the financial plan. Next slide. To develop the rate study, we looked at a series of financial forecast assumptions. Generally, those forecast assumptions deal with anticipated growth in costs. Overall, we are anticipating about a 2.5% annual increase in expenditures annually for the utility. Next slide. The total capital plan over the time period we evaluated was approximately $19.2 million. Of that $19 million, roughly $5 million, or about 25%, is anticipated to be completely or partially offset through grant funding. Next slide. So with those parameters and assumptions in place, we developed and evaluated two financial plan scenarios, and they revolve around the question of how quickly to execute the capital projects that are required for the city. If we were to extend the capital project schedule through 2029, what that means is we have more time to complete the projects and more time to generate funding to complete those projects. And so if we execute all the capital projects through 2029, the rates that are currently in place, along with inflationary adjustments each year to those rates, would fully fund both the operating costs for the utility, the capital program costs for the utility, as well as maintaining the utility's financial reserves. If we were to condense the capital schedule to be completed by 2026, what that means is we'll need additional revenue sooner, and that would require rate increases above and beyond the inflationary adjustments to rates. Both of these options include or assume a 6.04% inflationary adjustment next year. And that 6% is higher than previous years, but it's in line with the recent inflationary pressures we've seen to consumer price indices. Next slide. So as I mentioned, under the staff recommended option, the capital program would be completed through 2029 and would be completely funded through existing rates with inflationary adjustments of about 3% per year. If the capital plan were condensed to be completed within the next 5 years, in addition to those inflationary adjustments of 3%, we would also need to increase rates by an additional 6.75% each year from 2023 to 2026. What that means in terms of rates, this table is just for detail and reference. I'm actually going to jump to the next slide here to give you 2 examples. For the most common residential customer in the city, the staff recommended option would increase the monthly rate by about 79 cents in 2023, and each year thereafter by approximately an additional 80 to 90 cents per month. In contrast, next slide, please. The alternate option, which we're squeezing that capital plan into the next 5 years, that would increase rates between $2.50 a month to $3 per month each year from 2023 to 2026. Just as contrast, by 2026, the difference in that monthly rate increase is about $8. So the alternate rate impact option would be $8 more expensive to the most common residential customer by 2026 compared to the staff recommended option. Next slide. The projected impact on these stormwater rates in comparison to cities in the area. Essentially, the adjustment in 2022 would keep the city in its comparative position amongst other peer cities in the area. Next slide. So that concludes our financial plan, and pass the baton back to Austin or the city to follow up on the resolution.
Yeah,
Well-
thank you, Matt. Yeah, thanks, Austin. So yeah, that concludes the presentation. We do have the draft resolution and subsequent motion before the council tonight, and before we get to that, we can answer any questions of the council.
Okay, can't see a full screen at this time, so I can't see. I see Councilmember Bangs. I see then Councilmember Harris, Councilmember Buxton. I think that's it. So I'll start with Councilmember Bangs.
Yes, could you go back to the slide comparing us to the other cities, please? So I don't consider Bellevue to be, in dire need of income or help, but why are we so high compared to like a Bellevue or a SeaTac?
I can provide some context to this, and also look to our principal on the project, John Bladuch, to also provide some context. So, as interesting as many of these comparative rate surveys are, really cities are in different places when it comes to reinvesting in their assets as a utility. And so many cities go into in waves of capital investment over time. So just because one city may have a lower rate today, doesn't mean that they'll have that lower rate in the future. There are also issues with geography and the needs of moving surface water out of the city, depending on the topography of the area. So there are a lot of local nuances that drive rates as well.
And I can add a little bit about Bellevue. They have a pretty different rate structure, and you have to make assumptions about the size of the lot and the home in order to generate a sample rate like this. So these are kind of apples and oranges, and I've seen rate comparisons where the example for Bellevue was a much higher monthly rate just based on the assumptions made about the home and lot size. But Matt's right. Redmond's another one. They haven't had a rate increase for probably 5 years. And what we can't know or show here is what's going to happen in the coming years. We're looking at 2021 rates, and many of these cities may be due for increases.
So the other question I have is, what are some of the unanticipated things that we're quote unquote guarding against with this increase?
Yeah, thank you for the question, Councilmember Bangs. So the opportunity fund as described for unanticipated projects, are essentially twofold. One, you have opportunity projects where there's unforeseen opportunity in maybe a different department, say transportation department, doing a new capital project, and then now there's an opportunity to upgrade an existing pipe system or add a water quality element to their project or something to that extent, which would reduce costs. The other thing is just emergency type projects, whether you have something like a few years ago where we had the Woodmont landslide, which was unanticipated, and that was swim funded for a portion of those repairs, or different various flooding events that, you know, are unanticipated, or blockages to the system.
And then one more question, Mayor, and I'm done. What, how am I phrasing this? Oh, I just lost my train of thought. Come back to me.
Yeah, I'll go to Councilmember Harris.
Thank you, Mayor. Could we go back to the slide with the tree retention? Or I'm just, you know, you don't even bother. I know it's a pain. Like, is the city tracking those areas where there may be difficulties with geostabilization? Just do something to discourage homeowners from removing those kinds of trees. Does that make sense? What I'm asking about here?
It does. Thank you, Councilmember Harris. So to answer your question directly, no, we're not tracking trees in relation to erosion potential or geohazards on properties. What's included in this presentation is a recommendation and originated through the Environment Committee to make a focus of tree retention for aspects of water quality and flow control of stormwater, where trees can help reduce runoff and trees can promote healthy runoff before it enters our streams. So it's really an effort to look into how can we incentivize new developments to retain trees, how can we incentivize homeowners to plant trees, and really there's no other teeth to that recommendation yet. It's more of a, for the future of the comp plan, let's look into this more as a recommendation.
Yeah, no, I get it. I'm just basically throwing that out there because I'd sure like to talk about that at another time. Let's see here. No, I'm just rhetorically to my colleagues. I'm just, if it's an enterprise fund, you know, it should be an enterprise fund. And I'm just strongly inclined to these things paying for themselves and keeping it simple. And that's why in committee, I was more inclined to the option number 2. But okay, thank you, Tyler.
Councilmember Buxton.
Thank you. So what percentage of the increase will be used to create the opportunity fund, the 100,000 each year?
Do you have those numbers, Matt?
I not off the top of my head, but
Okay.
I would say, but generally it's a very small percentage. The majority of the rate increase is supporting the actual capital projects that will be completed over the next 10 years.
Okay, so if there's so since it's so small, even if there's a reserve at the end of 2029, so we move all the way to 2029, regardless of the opportunity fund or not, will the rate stay static, or will it continue to go up at the end of 2029, or will we have reached like a static point for our projection?
Yeah, so prior to 2029, we will start looking at the next 10-year comp plan and rate study for the future. So at that point, we'll look at what priority projects are left as priority projects and do another projection model to look at those rates. So a lot is unknown for those years and what rates will continue past 2029 until we get closer to those dates.
Okay, so it's basically, it's kind of a maintenance thing. It's not like we have a certain particular project or goal that we're trying to meet and then we'll be fine. It's just, it's kind of a operating situation.
Correct. Yeah, the comp plan sets rates for operating and capital projects for the entire enterprise fund of the surface water utility. So operating forward and managing projects in the future, we'll do another rate study as we get closer to 2029.
Okay, and then the last question, kind of open up to the Environment Committee, if there's any additional comments, since this has been presented to that committee a couple times, if there were any interesting questions or observations or concerns that you had along the way that you would be nice to note for the rest of us.
You know, first of all, it's the same, it was a similar discussion, similar presentation. We've asked a lot of the same questions. So we're in pretty well in lockstep. City Manager Matthias, you had something you wanted to add?
I do. I hope I don't either add too much or add incorrectly. But I thought Councilmember Banks asked a really good question. And I think what's important is to understand, you know, that what they're doing in developing a, you know, sort of alternative source for uncertain conditions and all of that is an extremely wise approach. And I think that comparing where we are with other cities doesn't capture the dynamic of how old is the infrastructure? What's the planning mechanisms we can to enhance and we manage stormwater? And I think we have a local example of where if we were compared with one utility district, our rates would be high. But that does not speak well to the safety of the infrastructure of any agency if you're not putting the money in there to maintain it. And so I think these guys have done a great job. I think that we have to be very hesitant comparing ourselves anywhere because it's apples and oranges, and I'm not sure that comparison does us justice. Thank you, Mayor.
Councilmember Banks, you had your second question, and then I'm going to Councilmember Nutting.
Yes, I remembered. Could you please remind me again how much the grants will offset?
Yes, of the approximately $20 million in projected capital projects, roughly $5 million is anticipated to be funded through grant funding. So up to 25% of the capital projects.
So I do understand we have to have a rainy day fund. I don't disagree with it. I know it's a tough time for many households. We have to acknowledge that. This makes sense to me, but it definitely has to be noted that any increase at this point in time for households who, you know, have gone through what we've all gone through is something we have to be really sensitive about. So thank you very much.
Mayor, if I may, just one quick comment. Councilmember Banks, you're absolutely right. And I think it's one reason for the second year in a row, the city is recommending to the council that we not take advantage of the 1% increase in property tax because we're trying to help people weather the storm of COVID and all the challenges that came with that. So it's a great point, and we've tried to mitigate that to the degree legally we're able to do so.
Thank you, City Manager. I appreciate that.
Councilmember Nutting.
I move to approve draft resolution number 21-051, adopting the 2021 mid-plan update to the 2015 Surface Water Comprehensive Plan, which includes the implementation of the recommended capital improvement plan 3-year delivery extension as identified as funding scenario number 1.
Second.
I have a second made by Councilmember Buxton. Okay, the last hand that we had up was Councilmember Harris.
Yeah. Thank you, Mayor. Is there any is any of this capital fund, you mentioned some flexibility to put it towards other transportation projects, perhaps. Is there any kind of boundary to keep it within the purview of stormwater? Or, I mean, I'm just.
Yeah, and I may have misspoke earlier. It is under the purview of stormwater. A great example of an opportunity project is the Des Moines Memorial Drive and 200th Signal project with CTAC, where they were coming in and redoing that intersection, and there was a known flooding location next to that. So we considered that as an opportunity and put an extension to their stormwater system to help with that flooding issue as an opportunity. So those dollars aren't meant for transportation improvements. Those are opportunity for stormwater enterprise improvements.
Thank you so much.
Okay, all those in favor of the motion as read and seconded, please raise your hand until I call your name. I see Councilmember Bangs, Councilmember Harris, Councilmember Nutting, Councilmember Buxton, Deputy Mayor Mahoney, and myself. Mr. Martinelli, your vote?
I am in favor.
Okay, this passes 7-0. Okay, thank you for the presentation. We'll now go forward to our board and committee reports with Councilmember comments, and we will start tonight with Councilmember Harris.
Let's see. Thank you, Mayor. Let's see here. Yeah, boy, you know, I really thought when I, you know, got this job that, yeah. I just want to say to the Taylor family, my family, unfortunately, has been in a similar situation, and I can only tell you that our feeling at the time was similar, that the problem starts upstream. You know, you find out that the person had several arrests, and it's just maddening because you realize that the trouble began years ago, and now it's too late. And I'll just tell you that this has been going on a long time, and I can only express that it's something that doesn't go away, and you'll never have an answer as to why you know, it got to this point. I'm so sorry. Let's see here. Yeah, wow, that just completely took everything else that I wanted to say. But I want to point out for the public that this censure, I believe, will only last until the next mayor is chosen and new committees and so forth. And so the next council, whatever it may be, will reconsider that. And I just want to make it clear that I am not thrilled about any of this. However, I will never deny professional cooperation to any of my colleagues. We're elected to cooperate with one another. There will be no shunning, and that's all I can tell you about it. I have personal feelings about all of this stuff, but everyone is elected, and our job is to try to work together. And frankly, I have, you know, I don't feel like I've received a great deal of cooperation, and I didn't do anything. So that's what I was elected to do, regardless of any kind of personal stuff. And that's really all I got to say about it. Thank you.
Mr. Martinelli.
Thank you, Mayor. I first want to apologize to the public for the lack of video. Same situation that happened a couple months ago. My video is not working properly. I'm going to buy an external webcam, so for future meetings, this doesn't happen again. My only comment is to say that I'm excited to hear from Chief Thomas that we are moving forward with the body camera program. It looks like it'll be implemented in January. That's exciting. It's taken a while to get to this point, but I think it's a positive step forward. And that's all the comments I have for tonight. Thank you.
Councilmember Bangs.
First of all, the body cam program is being discussed during negotiations. We don't have a date when this will be implemented. That was from our committee meeting today. The committee meeting was Public Safety and Emergency Management, and along with the body cam program is also animal control, which also has to be negotiated. So we don't have a set date on that. We are hoping. We will see what happens during negotiations with our Human Resources Director and with the Guild. Corey Batterman gave us an excellent update on what's happening with his code enforcement, and he's doing one heck of a job. I did ask for that presentation to be provided to all council members, so I'm not going to bore you. Well, actually, it's not boring at all. It's really exciting about what he's doing, and he's done a great job. His empathy related to even those that, we could probably impose thousands of dollars of fines. He's worked really hard with those people. And if they do get those kinds of fines, it's the last resort. The exciting news that we were told this evening was that the social services behavioral health position will be posted tomorrow. And hopefully by December, we will have someone working with CSO Tanya Seabury, focusing on homelessness and what those services are that they need. So that's extremely, extremely excited. And they also worked with our Human Resources Director, AJ. I have a comment to make because I'm a little perplexed and I'm a little confused. When I hear a council member like J.C. Harris talk about what we need to afford a council member, it's one thing to afford a council member respect and to work with and not to shun them, et cetera, et cetera. I can't speak to your personal experience with this council. I don't want to. I have my feelings about you as well, as you do with us. But as far as what's going on with Anthony Martinelli, that has absolutely nothing to do with what you're experiencing. What he did was egregious. What he did was wrong. He's going to go to court, but he has been arrested for those things that were in that report. You cannot deny that, and I take great offense to you thinking that we owe someone who has done that. Yeah, he's a council member. He can vote as he has been allowed to vote. But I have some serious concerns about some of your comments. That's all I have to say, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilmember Nutting.
Thank you, Mayor. The only thing I have to say is my heart goes out to the Taylor family. I can't even imagine what you're going through right now. And I do praise the Des Moines Police Department and Chief Thomas for everything that they've been trained to do. And it's just proof that having our own shield and officers that are invested in our community and how they can serve us. And I'm very proud of our community, and I can't even imagine what you're going through right now. So thank you so much for speaking out, and I'm very sorry. And that concludes my remarks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Buxton.
My heart goes out to you as well. It's heartbreaking to hear and listen. So I'm believing that there's going to be some progress made. Selena, thank you. Thank you for your thoughts, and thank you for sharing your story with us and your heart with us. and your mom as well.
You're welcome.
Yeah. So in the last couple of weeks, we had what I would consider to be a fabulous little community event in response to our Domestic Violence Awareness Month proclamation. We had supported our local safe house, the Lighthouse, with a 5K couple Saturdays ago. A shout out to Park Run for allowing us to share their course. Shout out to Quarterdeck for allowing us to use their facility there. We hosted the YWCA, an organization called Be Free, Lighthouse. Dawn was scheduled to come, but their volunteers were exposed to COVID, unfortunately, but it was a fabulous opportunity for these organizations to network with each other, to reach out into the community, for the community to reach to them. I really appreciated the opportunity, and it was a great way to honor Domestic Violence Awareness Month. So thank you. I attended the trick-or-treat path the other day, and that was really fun. The mayor was there, Deputy Mayor Mahoney, Councilmember Nutting, and got to see hundreds, if not a few thousand people come through. And we had a little photo booth station that was great to be able to just offer ourselves to take pictures of families having fun. Appreciated the opportunity. Then today I attended the PSRC's Growth Management Policy Board, and PSRC is gearing up to provide resources to cities as they move toward their comp plan work ending in 2024. So the Growth Management Policy Board had opportunity to give some feedback on a few items relating to tribal partnerships and transportation. So that's all I have for tonight. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Mahoney.
Thank you, Mayor. I also send my condolences to the Taylor family. I love your words about love. And we have a Waterland parade in July every year, and I would like to contact you later and make a statement about that for our parade. So look me up and we'll talk, because I think we can cross all of our communities with a message at that time. With that said, my deepest sympathies. I don't normally cry, and you had me in tears, and I'm just can't even imagine your loss. So my deepest condolences. Yes, the trick-or-treat path was a great success. I want to thank the council members that showed up. We went through a boatload of candy, and it's always great to see the kids of all diversities there. It's a great cross-section of our community. I wanted to let everybody know that Mount Rainier Rams made the playoffs, and they will be playing in Camas on Friday at 6 p.m., which is about 4 hours away, unfortunately. But I am wishing Coach Mack and everybody, encourage the residents in the community to do so, to cheer them on from afar if you can't make it, of course. But that's exciting. I'm going to be Dan Brewer for a sec, and I'm going to remind people to make sure their storm drains are clean. We got a lot of rain, and it's going to be important. We just talked about stormwater management, and by cleaning them, we may not have damage. If you don't clean them, it could create damage. I'm excited that the city is eager to participate and offer a Veterans Day event next Thursday, November 11th at Stephen J. Underwood Park. We'll be raising the flags of our new military flag pavilion, along with a Veterans Day event. I have secured Amara Drazkowski to sing the national anthem, and it looks like we'll have several scouts to help participate. Michael, I want to thank you and Bonnie and the rest of the staff for championing that, and I can't wait to host that. I think it's a great honor that we can pay our veterans when we get the opportunity. So I can't thank you enough for that. I encourage everybody to either we'll do something Facebook Live, and also come to it if you can. Our new Stephen J. Underwood Park is phenomenal. It's particularly the kids' play section, and there will be cover from the rain if we need it. And on November 13th, it's going to be Squid-A-Rama. There's Arts Commission has worked very hard. I know Luis Councilmember Banks can attest to that. There's hundreds of artworks up there for people to judge and so forth, and they'll be announcing the winner. I will be going in the water and releasing the squid with Randy Williams, so I'm really excited about that as well. Anyway, thank you. Back to you, Mayor.
Well, folks, that brings us to the end of our meeting. Everything in my report has been covered, and I appreciate something I'm seeing. Councilmember Bangs is trying to get my attention for some reason. We are at the end of the meeting. Is this something pertinent to your?
Yes, 2 seconds.
Go ahead.
All right. Night of Hope 2021 is happening on the 6th at 5 o'clock. And this is supporting the Genesis Project. I just wanted to make sure everyone knew about it. Please go online. You can attend in person, or you can contribute online, or they have several other ways you can. So I wanted to make sure I did that for former Councilmember Rob Back.
Thank you. And that concludes the presiding officer's report that I have yielded to Councilmember Banks. So that brings us back to the end of our meeting. Our next meeting will be November 18th, 2021, where we will have the second reading of our 2022 annual budget. Thank you for coming tonight. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
I see Councilmember Nutting and Deputy Mayor Mahoney. All those in favor, please raise your hand. I see all hands up, so we are adjourned.